I don't usually get out of work early. In fact, it had become something of a joke. Don't bother texting Aaron before 8, Caitlin used to say with a laugh. I was managing 2 teams at the firm, juggling back-to-back deadlines, always buried in emails and spreadsheets. But that Friday, by some miracle, the client presentation got bumped, and I figured, screw it. I'll surprise her. I even grabbed dinner from that Thai spot she loves in Fremont, the one she used to beg me to pick up from when we were still in that can't keep our hands off each other stage. I parked in our driveway just past 4. The house sat quiet, almost too quiet. Normally, she'd have a podcast playing or be on speaker with one of her sisters. But that afternoon, nothing. Not even the usual bark from our neighbor's dog. As I stepped into the entryway, I was immediately hit by the subtle scent of her perfume, floral, but sharp, mixed with something faintly musky. I remember thinking it was odd how warm the air felt inside, almost humid. I called out, "Kate!" Nothing. I moved through the hallway, slow, quiet. That's when I noticed it, the living room. 2 wine glasses sat on the coffee table, one with just a sip left at the bottom, the other halfway full, still fogged with heat like someone had just been holding it. The bottle of red beside them wasn't even something we usually drank. Italian, mid-range, one of those brands she always said tasted like fancy juice. But we weren't supposed to be drinking. She had mentioned starting a fitness challenge that week. More than that, though, a men's windbreaker hung over the back of the armchair. Navy blue, slightly damp at the collar, like it had been worn in the rain. My heart sank a bit in my chest. Not plummeting, but dipping just enough to send a ripple through my gut. I stared at that jacket longer than I should have, waiting for a reasonable explanation to rise up in my head. Then I noticed the faint trace of steam wafting from the hallway that led to the bathroom. Not smoke, not food, steam, as if someone had just finished showering. My brain didn't want to believe what my senses were processing. This was the kind of stuff you see in movies, the kind that's too on the nose to be real. But here I was, standing in my own home, takeout bag in hand, staring at 2 glasses, a man's coat, and steam from a running shower. It all painted a picture I didn't want to look at. I was about to call her name again when Caitlin appeared. She rounded the hallway corner in a pale gray robe, her hair still damp, skin glowing like she had just stepped out of a spa. No makeup, no jewelry, barefoot, calm. If she was surprised to see me, it didn't show in any way that would give her away. "You're home early," she said, blinking once, voice soft but unreadable. She gave a brief glance at the coffee table, then walked over and began gathering the glasses like it was the most normal thing in the world. "Yeah," I said, still holding the food like an idiot. Presentation got moved. Thought I'd bring dinner. She smiled, but it was the kind of smile you give a stranger in an elevator. "That's sweet. I was just catching up with a friend from the gym. He came by to help me with the workout tracking app. I've been totally useless with it." I didn't answer right away. I just watched her rinse the glasses in the sink, her movements measured and light, like she'd rehearsed this in her head a dozen times. The robe tightened around her waist as she moved, cinched just right, barely showing anything but somehow still feeling an asterisk made in a way that suddenly didn't feel meant for me. "Friend from the gym?" I asked, still standing near the living room. "Yeah," she said casually, turning her head to meet my eyes. "You've met him, Matt, the tall one with the tattoos. I think he came to the holiday party 2 years ago. Super nice guy. He's just good with tech stuff. And with you working such crazy hours lately?" She trailed off, letting the silence fill in the rest of the sentence for her. I should have asked why she needed help with an app in person, or why she had to open a bottle of red and take a shower after. But the way she said it, with that slight edge of annoyance, like I had some nerve coming home unannounced and interrupting her, it disarmed me. "Don't look at me like that," she added, a little laugh escaping her lips. "You're not jealous, are you?" "No," I said too quickly. "Just wasn't expecting anyone else." "Well," she shrugged, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "If we spent more than 5 minutes together in the evenings, maybe I wouldn't need to call anyone else to help me." There it was, the pivot. She shifted the conversation smoothly to me. My hours, my stress, my emotional unavailability. It wasn't an attack, not exactly. More like a gentle guilt trip, wrapped in a sigh and a tired smile. She'd used this tone before, usually when she wanted to make a point without looking like she was starting a fight. She was good at it. Scary good. I felt my shoulders sink as I set the food down. Suddenly, the moment had transformed. I wasn't the guy who came home to a suspicious scene. I was the inattentive husband who couldn't make time for his wife. My concerns? Reframed. My gut feeling? Recast as insecurity. I don't remember much of what we said after that. She changed into leggings and a hoodie. We ate in front of the TV, some rerun playing in the background. Every so often, she laughed at something and leaned into me, trying to fill the space with normal. I let her. I told myself maybe I was just tired. Maybe I was seeing ghosts in the steam, in the glasses, in a coat that might have been a delivery guy's for all I knew. But that night, lying next to her, something gnawed at me. She fell asleep quickly, her back turned, breathing even. I stared at the ceiling for what felt like hours, her words looping in my head. "You're not jealous, are you?" The way she said it, so offhand, so rehearsed. It wasn't just the jacket or the wine, or even the calmness with which she deflected the whole thing. It was how quickly she turned it into something I had done wrong. That was the part that stuck with me. She'd made it clear. If I was feeling suspicious, if anything looked off, it wasn't because she had something to hide. It was because I wasn't doing enough. I wasn't home enough. I wasn't seeing her. I was the problem. And the worst part? In that moment, I believed her. The next morning, I sat in my office, pretending to work. My monitor glowed in front of me, but I couldn't tell you what was on it. I just stared. Emails sat unread. Notifications blinked on Slack. And still, my mind wandered back to the wine glasses, the coat, the steam, the way Caitlin smiled like everything made perfect sense, because to her it probably did. That was the moment it clicked. Not all at once. Not in some dramatic thunderclap. More like water dripping into a glass until it's just full enough to spill over. I started thinking about the last few months, not in broad strokes, but in pieces. Little fragments I'd pushed aside or laughed off, chalked up to stress, coincidence, or just me being overly sensitive. But now, they fit together like puzzle pieces I didn't want to finish. First, there was the laptop. Caitlin used to do everything in the open. She'd sit on the couch with her legs curled up under her, tapping away on her MacBook while I watched the game or read. She even used to ask for my help when some software update confused her. But somewhere along the line, that stopped. I can't remember the first time I noticed her shutting her laptop the moment I walked into a room. But once I noticed it, I couldn't stop seeing it. Sometimes she'd minimize the window so fast it felt like instinct. Once, I caught a reflection in the kitchen window, some sort of messaging app open, too fast for me to make out. But when I came around the corner, the screen was locked. Then there were the late-night gym trips. Caitlin's always been fit, but she was never the kind of person who worked out at 9:30 p.m. She used to say that evenings were her downtime, wine, TV, maybe a bath. But a couple of months ago, she suddenly decided she needed to really commit to her fitness goals. At first, I was supportive. "You do you," I said. "That's awesome." But as the weeks passed, the timing got weirder. She'd come back around 11, sometimes later. She'd always shower at the gym, she said, which struck me as odd because she used to hate those locker room showers. And her clothes? Not always gym clothes. Sometimes just jeans and a hoodie. I didn't work out tonight. I ended up grabbing coffee with one of the girls instead. There was always a reason. Always a version of the story that added up barely. Then the cologne. I noticed it one evening when I sat in her car to move it out of the driveway. She'd left the window cracked, and the leather seats were cold. As soon as I sat down, I smelled it. Not like perfume or air freshener. It was definitely cologne, musky, expensive. Not mine. Not anything I'd ever worn. I sat there for a few seconds, just breathing it in, like I could identify the man by scent alone. When I asked her about it later, she laughed. "Oh my God, Aaron. Seriously? I gave a friend from work a ride after yoga. That must be it." She always had answers like that. Casual, well-rehearsed, just plausible enough to make me feel like I was being irrational. Our joint bank account had red flags too. I didn't monitor it closely, we had a system. Bills, groceries, household stuff. No micromanaging. But after that night with the glasses and the robe, I couldn't help myself. I pulled up our recent transactions during lunch, and what I found made my stomach twist. There were charges I couldn't explain. Ubers to unfamiliar addresses. Coffee shops and bars she'd never mentioned going to. A boutique hotel in the city that billed under a generic name. One entry was just labeled Hospitality SVCs. Another was a Venmo transfer. $600, sent to a name I didn't recognize. The caption just said, "Rent." When I asked her later, casually, what it was, she smiled like it was no big deal. Oh, that was for Lisa. She needed help with rent last month and didn't want to ask her boyfriend. I spotted her. But Lisa had moved in with her fiancé a year ago. I remembered because Caitlin helped her pack. And then there were the weekend trips. At first, I encouraged them. You need time with your friends, I'd said. Get out of town. Recharge. I meant it too. I wanted her to have her own life. She'd book hotel rooms with her friends, leave Friday after work, and come back Sunday afternoon glowing with energy. I figured she was getting her version of self-care. Shopping, wine, bad reality TV, and bathrobes. But each time she returned, it felt different. Her energy was too high. The kind of high you don't get from a massage and retail therapy. There'd be new clothes in the trunk, receipts from restaurants I'd never heard of. I once found a lighter in her purse with a hotel logo on it. She doesn't smoke, never has. And then there were the phone calls. Not a flood of them, but enough to notice. Quiet, hushed tones behind closed doors. Her voice always dropped when she stepped away. She'd take the calls in the bedroom, in the garage, once even in the backyard while pretending to check on the garden. Work drama, she said when I asked. You know how toxic that place is lately. I wanted to believe her, but she used to complain about her job to me. Now I was the guy she was hiding things from. She also started locking her phone screen. That, in itself, wasn't the issue. We both had passcodes, but she used to leave it lying face up all over the house. Now it was always flipped over. Once, I caught her jump when it buzzed and I glanced at it. Just a flicker of panic before she plastered on a smile. Just a Slack notification, she said, and tucked it into her hoodie pocket. I told myself I was overthinking, that this was just the stuff couples went through when life got stressful. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. And now, with the wine glasses and the windbreaker and the steam still fresh in my mind, it wasn't just a feeling. It was a pattern. A slow unraveling I'd ignored for too long. That night, I didn't say anything. I went home like usual. We ate leftovers. She made some joke about her boss. I laughed like everything was fine. But inside, I felt like I was walking on a frozen lake, hearing the cracks under my feet. I started paying closer attention, watching her, not in a creepy, obsessive way but alert, listening for tone, watching for stories that didn't line up. I wasn't sure what I was looking for exactly, but I knew what I wasn't seeing anymore. Trust. Caitlin still kissed me goodnight, still curled into me in the mornings, still said, "I love you," like she meant it. But something about it felt like a script, a play we were both acting in. I wasn't sure when the performance had started, but now that I'd noticed it, I couldn't unsee it. And in the back of my mind, I kept thinking, what if I hadn't come home early that day? What if I'd stayed another hour at the office like usual? What would I have never known? A week later, it happened. The moment I stopped doubting myself. It was a Tuesday, and I remember it clearly because it was pouring. One of those late spring Seattle rains that felt like it might never stop. Gray clouds pressed down so low you felt them in your bones, and everything, traffic, conversation, even time, moved a little slower. I'd been halfway to a client meeting when I realized I'd left the folder I needed sitting on the kitchen counter at home. I called Caitlin twice, thinking maybe she was working from home again, but both calls went to voicemail. No big deal, I thought. I'll just swing by and grab it. I was already in the area anyway. But the closer I got to the house, the more that old unease crept back in. I brushed it off, told myself I was being paranoid. We'd had a decent weekend. Dinner at that seafood place in Ballard, a movie at home, even a lazy Sunday morning in bed like old times. Things felt okay, maybe even good. She'd been smiling more, touching my arm when she talked, cracking jokes like we used to. But looking back, it almost felt like she was trying too hard to steer us back toward something that had already drifted. Like she wanted to soften the blow before something else landed. I pulled up to the curb and parked behind an unfamiliar car. It was a dark green Mazda, older model, with a dent in the rear bumper and university parking stickers on the windshield. UW, Tacoma campus. I'd never seen it before. At first I thought it might be a delivery, but no one was on the porch. No packages. No bags. Just the car. Parked crooked in our driveway like it had been rushed. I stepped out, folder on my mind but heart now thudding somewhere near my throat. I didn't slam the car door. Didn't even let it click shut. I walked up the driveway slowly, listening to the rain tapping against the hood of my jacket. The front door was locked, so I used my key and stepped in as quietly as I could. The house was too quiet. No TV, no music. No sign of activity. But the first thing I noticed was the smell. Wine, candles, something floral and heavy. She only lit those candles when she was trying to impress someone. The expensive ones from that boutique in Capitol Hill, the ones that came in black glass jars and cost more than I ever understood. I left the door half open behind me and moved toward the kitchen. Empty. Then the hallway. As I passed by the guest bathroom, I noticed the same wine glasses again on the hallway table. The bottle next to them was nearly empty, and a couple of strawberries sat on a small cutting board beside them. I remember thinking, strawberries? Who does strawberries at 2 in the afternoon? That's when I heard it. A voice. Male. It wasn't loud. Just a low murmur from behind the bedroom door, followed by a soft laugh. Hers. I froze. I wanted to knock, kick the door in, scream, anything. But instead I just stood there, my hand on the doorknob, barely breathing. Then I saw it, the mirror in the hallway cabinet, positioned just right so I could see the edge of our bedroom reflected inside. And there they were, Caitlin, in bed, her back to me, legs tucked under a comforter, and a man lying beside her, shirtless, propped up on one elbow. His face turned toward hers, smiling like he belonged there, like this was just another Tuesday. On the nightstand beside them was the same wine bottle, same glasses, and her phone, screen up, open to a Spotify playlist titled Slow Afternoons. I felt the breath go out of me like I'd been punched. Everything went blurry around the edges like tunnel vision, but not in the dramatic movie sense. Just this numb, dead quiet in my head where all my thoughts used to live. I didn't feel rage, not yet. Just emptiness. Like the part of me that had been holding out hope finally gave up. I stepped back, slowly, quietly. My hand left the doorknob. I didn't make a sound. Just backed down the hallway, retracing my steps like I was sleepwalking. I grabbed the folder off the kitchen counter and walked back out into the rain. The whole thing couldn't have lasted more than 60 seconds. I didn't slam the door, didn't leave a dramatic note, didn't break anything or scream into the sky. I just got into my car, drove 2 blocks, and parked on a side street under a tree, windshield wipers thudding back and forth while I stared straight ahead at nothing. I think I sat there for a full 20 minutes before my hands stopped shaking. The thoughts didn't come in order. They just flooded in all at once. How long? Who was he? Was he the guy with the rent payment? The late-night gym friend? Had he been at our house before? How many times had I been the idiot who believed every story she fed me? And still, somehow I was more hurt than angry. Like all the versions of myself that had trusted her, defended her, bent over backwards to make her happy. They'd all just been made fools of. It wasn't about S*X. Not really. It was the lies. The way she smiled in my face and told me she loved me while handing herself to someone else behind closed doors. The quiet betrayal. The ease with which she did it. It made me question everything. I didn't go back to the office that day. I drove aimlessly instead, through neighborhoods we used to walk in, past restaurants we'd eaten at. Places that used to feel like ours. Every street looked different now, like it belonged to someone else. I felt like a ghost driving through the ruins of my own life. That night, I didn't go home. I packed a bag, stopped by Jason's place, and told him I needed to crash for a bit. He didn't ask questions, just handed me a beer and said, "Whatever you need, man." We sat on his couch, watching the Mariners lose another game while my mind played that hallway scene on a loop. Caitlin texted once, then twice. "Hey, where are you? Everything okay?" And later, "I made dinner if you're on your way." I didn't respond. I didn't even open them. Instead, I wrote a note. Not a long one. Just enough to say what needed to be said without giving her the satisfaction of a conversation. "Caitlin, I know. That's all there is to say. I won't be coming back tonight. I won't be part of this anymore. You made your choice. Live with it." I drove back the next morning at sunrise, when I knew she wouldn't be awake. The house was still. Her car was in the driveway. The green Mazda was gone. I let myself in, left the note on the kitchen counter, grabbed the rest of my work stuff, a few changes of clothes, and one framed photo of my parents and me from a trip years ago. The only thing in that house that still felt untouched. Then I walked out, locked the door behind me, and drove away. Not forever. Not yet. But enough to make it real. Enough to let her know the charade was over. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel uncertain. I didn't feel like I needed more proof. I didn't need explanations or excuses. I knew. I had seen it. And I was done. The day after I saw them together, I didn't go back to the house. Couldn't. Even the idea of walking through the door made my chest tighten. Every corner of that place felt poisoned now, like it belonged to someone else. Someone naive enough to believe he was building a future with a woman who had already moved on without saying a word. I stayed at Jason's. He gave me his spare room, cleared out a drawer, even made space in his fridge for my grocery habits, protein shakes, leftover stir-fry, almond milk. It was a strange kindness, one I hadn't realized I needed until I was there. Waking up in a room that didn't smell like her shampoo or echo with the memory of her laughter. It was neutral, safe. I didn't tell him everything. Not yet. I just said Caitlin and I were going through something. And he didn't push. That's the thing about real friends. They don't need all the details to show up for you. That Friday, I went back to the house one more time. It was late afternoon, and I knew she'd still be at work, or wherever it was she went now when she said she was working. I parked in front, took a long breath, and walked up the steps. Everything looked the same, which somehow made it worse. The porch light still flickered like it always had. The little welcome mat she picked out last year was still crooked, and our mailbox still had both our names on it in Sharpie. But the place didn't feel like mine anymore. Felt like I was walking into someone else's lie. I had a plan. No confrontation. No drama. Just action. Inside, I moved quickly, room by room, gathering what I needed. Clothes, documents, my laptop, a box of personal keepsakes I'd shoved into a closet months ago and forgotten about. I didn't pack everything. Just enough to make it clear I wasn't coming back anytime soon. On my way out, I stopped in the kitchen. Same counter where she used to dance while she made breakfast. Same tile where we'd spilled red wine during a game night. I looked around at all the familiar things. The wedding photo still hanging on the fridge. The notes she used to leave me. Get milk. Love you. K*LL the spider in the garage. And for a second I felt it. The weight of what we were losing. The ache of a life that had looked perfect from the outside but had been slowly eroding underneath. I stood there longer than I meant to, keys in hand, backpack slung over one shoulder, wondering how it had come to this. How I'd gone from planning our 5-year anniversary trip to writing goodbye notes on yellow sticky pads. Then I pulled a sheet from the notepad on the counter and wrote, Caitlin, I told you I know. I meant it. I'm not doing this anymore. Not the pretending. Not the rewriting of reality. No more charades. I've taken what I need for now. Please don't contact me. Aaron. It wasn't poetic. It wasn't angry. But it was final. I stuck it to the fridge, next to the photo of us in Vancouver, the one where we're laughing in the rain, holding ice cream cones, soaked to the bone but pretending not to care. I used to love that photo. Now it just felt like a still frame from a movie that never made it to the end. I left without looking back. I ignored her texts that night. The first one came around 6:30. Hey, did you stop by the house? Then another, 30 minutes later. Your clothes are gone. Are you okay? Then a string of them. Aaron, please call me. What's going on? Why are you doing this? I didn't respond. I didn't even open them. I just stared at my screen until it went dark again, then flipped the phone over on the nightstand like I used to see her do. The next morning, I opened her messages, not to reply, but to save them. I **Ted everything. Not because I wanted to revisit them, but because something in me had shifted. I wasn't just heartbroken anymore. I was preparing. For what, I wasn't sure yet. But the part of me that used to forgive too quickly had gone silent. By Sunday, she started calling. I'd be mid-conversation with Jason or listening to a podcast, and her name would flash on my screen. I never picked up. Sometimes she left voicemails, her voice small and strained, as if she was scared of what I might do, as if I had been the one sneaking around. The irony made me sick. The voicemails started to repeat the same lines. Can we just talk? Please don't throw this away. You don't understand, Aaron. But I did understand. That was the difference now. I understood how easy it had been for her to lie. How quick she'd been to shift the blame onto me every time I got too close to the truth. How long she'd kept up the performance of a woman who was still invested in the life we'd built together. That Tuesday, a week after I saw them, I met with a lawyer. Her name was Michelle. Mid-40s, sharp eyes, no nonsense. She didn't coddle me, and I didn't need her to. I showed her the **TS, told her everything I'd seen, everything I suspected. She took notes, asked questions, gave me a clear rundown of what the process would look like. You're not the first person to sit across from me like this, she said, matter of fact. But you might be one of the calmest. I smiled faintly. That's because the panic already happened. Now I'm just tired. She nodded like she understood, and I think she did. I signed the initial paperwork that day. Nothing binding yet, just a signal of intent. It was the first real step toward separation, toward turning the story of us into a series of signatures and filings. Later that evening, I stopped by the house again, not to talk, just to get my tools from the garage and a few other essentials. Her car wasn't there. I noticed she'd cleaned the kitchen. The sticky note was gone. So was the photo. There was something cold about the house now. Not physically, it was summer by then, but spiritually. Like all the warmth we'd once poured into it had been siphoned out, one lie at a time. I found my old leather notebook buried under a stack of cookbooks in the dining room. The one she bought me for our anniversary the first year. I used to write in it when I was working through something, business ideas, relationship goals, bits of poetry I never showed anyone. I sat down at the table and flipped it open. The first page was dated March 3rd, nearly 5 years earlier. Today we moved into the house. Caitlin said it feels like the start of something. I hope she's right. I want to build a life here with her. I've never felt this sure. Reading those words made my chest ache. I wanted to rip the page out, but I didn't. Instead, I turned to a fresh page and wrote, "Today I left the house. Caitlin doesn't know this version of me. The version that walks away." Then I closed the book, packed it with the rest of my things, and walked out the door again. This time I didn't leave a note. The messages kept coming in the days that followed. Sometimes they were gentle, "Can we talk?" And sometimes desperate, "I made a mistake. Please, Aaron." Other times they veered into accusation. "You're acting like a stranger. You never gave me a chance to explain. You shut down instead of fighting for us." But the truth was, she hadn't left me anything worth fighting for. She'd been making choices for months that pulled us apart in quiet, irreversible ways. I didn't respond. Instead, I kept moving forward. One email, one signature, one box at a time. And the version of myself that used to cling to hope, he was learning how to let go. By the second week of silence, Caitlin stopped pretending. Her first attempts at contact had been wrapped in softness, remorse, confusion, the illusion of vulnerability. But when I didn't bite, her messages started shifting. The tone sharpened. Less apology, more accusation. Less "I'm sorry," more "this isn't fair." Started with a long email. The subject line just read, "Please read." I saw it come in during a meeting. I knew I shouldn't open it, but curiosity always finds the cracks when you're tired. The email was nearly 1,000 words, and not one of them surprised me. "Aaron, I don't know where to begin. I know you think you understand what happened, but I promise you, there's more to the story. What you saw, it wasn't what it looked like. I know how that sounds, but it's true." She went on to say the guy, whom she now finally admitted was named Leo, was just a friend who crossed a line. According to her, they'd been talking about emotional stuff for months, and things got blurry. She never intended for it to become physical. It was a one-time thing. She was lonely. I was distant. The same song I'd heard in fragments for months, just played all at once now. "I didn't cheat on you out of hate," she wrote. "I did it out of feeling unseen, unloved. We were barely talking. You came home late every night. We stopped laughing. I tried to bring it up so many times, but you never really heard me." That line stuck with me. You never really heard me. As if her betrayal was a cry for help. As if lying and sneaking around and dragging another man into our home was a last resort after some grand emotional starvation. She ended the email with, "You and I built something real. I know you're angry, but please don't throw it all away over one mistake." One mistake. The way she phrased it, like it was a car accident or a missed appointment. A blip. A glitch in the system. As if our marriage was something you could power cycle back to normal if you just hit reset hard enough. I didn't reply. I reread it once more before filing it away with the others. A folder now sat on my desktop titled Evidence. Inside, **TS, financial records, texts, and now emails. Each one a breadcrumb that led to the same truth. She'd known what she was doing. She just didn't think I'd ever find out. The next day, she showed up at Jason's. I was in the middle of folding laundry when I heard the knock. I opened the door, and there she was. Rain-soaked, eyes wide, hair stuck to her forehead. She looked like someone who hadn't slept in days. Her voice was almost a whisper. "Aaron, please, just let me talk." I stared at her for a second, then turned to Jason, who was watching from the living room. "You good?" he asked. "I'm fine," I said, stepping outside and shutting the door behind me. We stood on the porch under the overhang. Rain tapping above us, her breath visible in the chill. "I shouldn't be here," she said quickly. "I know that, but I didn't know what else to do. You won't answer anything. You're just gone. And I can't sleep. I can't think. I can't." I held up a hand. "Stop," I said. "I got your email. I read it. I don't need more excuses." Her face cracked. "It wasn't an excuse." "Yes, it was," I said flatly. "You're trying to explain it away like it was just some breakdown in communication. Like our marriage had a glitch." "Caitlin, it didn't glitch. You broke it. On purpose." "I didn't mean to," she cried, voice suddenly rising. "I didn't plan it, Aaron. It just happened, and I hated myself for it. I still do." "You hated yourself so much you did it more than once," I said. "You covered for him financially. I saw the transfers. You brought him into our home, into our bed." She froze. "You went through my accounts?" "I went through our accounts," I said. "Big difference." Her mouth opened, then shut. She didn't deny it, just turned away and wiped at her eyes with the sleeve of her jacket. "I was spiraling," she whispered. "And you weren't there." "I was working," I said, fists clenched in my pockets, "to support the life you seemed to enjoy plenty when it was convenient. You want to talk about being absent? Let's talk about the nights you came home at midnight and told me it was Pilates. Or the trips with friends, where your phone mysteriously died for hours." Her eyes met mine then, and for the first time, I saw something honest behind the tears. Shame. "I messed up," she said quietly. "I know that, but I'm still your wife, Aaron." "No," I said. You were. And then you chose someone else. A beat of silence passed between us. She shook her head slowly. You're really not coming back, are you? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Without another word, she turned and walked down the steps. The rain swallowed her up, and I didn't watch her go. After that, the pressure campaign began. Voicemails, letters, messages through mutual friends. She even had her sister call me. She's really hurting, her sister said. She's in therapy now. She says it was the biggest mistake of her life. I thanked her for the message, then asked her not to call again. The following Monday, I got a new kind of email. The subject line, "If you want to divorce me, you'll have to talk to me first." Inside, "If you think you can just disappear and start the process without including me, you're wrong. I have rights too. I'm not going to be thrown out like garbage just because you're angry. This isn't how people who spent years together treat each other. If you won't talk to me, I'll make sure the court hears my side first." And just like that, the guilt she tried to wield was replaced with control, with threat, with a warning that if I didn't engage, she'd make this ugly. That night, I forwarded the email to Michelle, my lawyer. Her reply came 15 minutes later. "You're doing the right thing. Don't respond. I'll take it from here." That's when I realized Caitlin was going to try everything. The next day, I received a message from her work email. "I miss you. I'm sorry. But if you're going to throw me away, then don't expect me to make this easy for you. You're not the only one with a story." I reread that line again and again. You're not the only one with a story. And maybe she was right. Maybe her version would paint me as distant, cold, emotionally unavailable. Maybe it would lean on timelines that blurred together, bending facts until they were more convenient. But none of it would change the truth. She betrayed me, and now she was scrambling to rewrite the story before it could be finalized. I started seeing the patterns more clearly after that. The way her emails fluctuated from grief to venom. One day it was, "We were soulmates. Please don't let this be the end." The next, "You never really loved me. You were just waiting for an excuse to leave." It was like watching someone drown in their own lies, grasping for any lifeline, even if they were the one who cut the rope.